Exactly. Good morning, Kumlana Blat Gemara. We're up to the Tzadik Hey in Chulin, and we introduced the idea about basa that's found by a goy or basa shenis alim min ayin. What exactly does that mean? So the Gemara says here about 13 lines on the top of the page. Amar Rav said, basa. When it comes to meat, we had a whole Gemara in Avodah Zarah about if you transport meat with a goy, whether or other things, wine, milk, whether it has to have one seal or two seals. Amarav, basa meat, kivashin is alim and ayin. If nobody was watching it or monitoring it, also is forbidden. And here we're talking about it's forbidden if it's just lying out there, not because necessarily a goy will come and change it, but we're worried that a bird came, took it, and another bird came, brought another piece of meat in its place. So Meisha will ask you a couple of questions. Ask you question number one. Rebbe says, Mekulin, if you have stores with Tafche Yisrael, but all the shachtim in town, those who kill the meat are all Yidden, so we can assume that they're all kosher. Any meat that's found in the hands of a goy is permitted. And the reason why it's mutter is because if it would have been treif, there would have been an announcement or something. Now, no announcement, assume is kosher. So it seems clearly from here that it wasn't watched by a Yid, and yet we say that the Yid is permitted Yid. What about Basa Shinus Alim and Ayin? Says the Gemara, shiny. We're worried about now the birds, the crows, the ravens coming and taking and bringing others instead. Here, a goy at least was watching it. And therefore, we know the goy definitely didn't shacht and kill it because all the shachtim, were all the slaughterhouses are run by Yidden. And over here, they don't sell treif or there were an announcement. But if it's lying in the street, we're worried about the crows or the ravens taking it. Tashma, come in here. A Gemara that we learned numerous occasions, starting with Ksubis. Tashma, we learned Teisha Chanuyas. There were 10 stores in total. 9 of the stores were selling moichres bosas chuta kosher meat, and va'achas, and one of them meched bosas about treif meat. Now, we have a concept called kavua. We learned in Or Tezvav, we learned out from the Arabloy that, if you ambush somebody, you threw a rock in, so the number of Eden are going together. So what bottom line we learned is for anything which is fixed in its place, and I don't care about numbers, or there's a concept called kavua, kimechza mechza dummies, like 50-50. One Yid, 9 goyim, like 50-50 had a chance of hitting the Yid. And but if it's parush, if it left its original scene and out somewhere, then we ask ourselves, where did it come from? It probably came from the majority. So the 9 kosher stores and 1 treif store. And you bought in one of the stores, you just can't remember which store you entered and you bought it from. So the suffix began inside one of the stores, which is fixed. And kol kavua kimechza mechzadami. So if you look at me, you bought from one, you bought from fake asa. We say what kavua, it's asa. Aber benimtza. If you found it out in the street, and now you ask yourself, so from which store did it come from? Then halech acharei will say it came from one of the majority of the stores which happened to be kosher. Now, you found it in the street, but you just said basa shenis alim and ayin meat that nobody was monitoring or supervising it is usher, because maybe it was swapped. So who cares if it originated in a kosher store? It should still be usher. Yes, says the Gemara. When we say found in the street, we don't mean lying on the ground, in the hands of a goy. So the goy definitely made sure the bird didn't take it away. And then we ask ourselves, so where did the goy get this meat from? Probably from one of the kosher stores. Okay, Toshma. So again, no question. Toshma. Another rice, which is more definitive. Motzabah Basar, he found meat. He found meat in this town, which is a number of Eden living there, a number of goyim living there, and he found a piece of meat. Im chai, if it's raw the meat, if it's raw meat, and you ask yourself, so where did this meat come from? So you say it probably came from a Yiddish place. The mevushel, if the meat is cooked, so if the meat was found in the street, so we're learning the Rav's din about Basar Shenas Alim and Ayin, if it's Asr or not. And the Rav said that Basar Shenas Alim and Ayin is Asr because we're scared, even if it's lying and nobody's watching over it, Doesn't help the fact that the Reiv flesh here comes from the Yiddish Tabachin, because we're scared that a bird came, took the kosher meat away, and brought treif meat in his place, or another bird brought treif meat in his place. So we're going through a number of questions. It seems that Nimtza, you found it, and we could say just go after the Reiv, like 9 stores selling kosher and 1 treif. So we answer Nimtza always means you found it, according to Rab at least, you found it in the hand of a goy. So the guy made sure the bird didn't take it away from him. It's only a question where the guy got it from. Well, if Reiv shocked him on the city, Ayidin, that's good enough. So now we're up to the Braisa here, about 13 lines from the bottom of the page. We're going to continue asking questions on this Basa Shinisamanai. Talking about much about, but you found in the city where a number of Eden live, a number of Goyim live, you found a piece of meat. And again, it sounds like matzah that you found it on the ground. That's what we'll see. You go after the majority of kosher. But if if it was a cooked piece of meat, if it's a cooked meat, don't look at who had most of the slaughterhouses, but rather look at the consumers of meat. So if most people who eat meat, let's say they eat vegetarians, or couldn't afford the meat, if most people who eat meat are goyim, then we'll say we're talking about the idea of basher shenas alam and ayin, but not because the goyim might have changed it. We're talking about that a bird might have, lying on the ground alone, the bird would have taken it and put it back. That was very, very machman. Taisus clearly says it's only a chumra ba'alma, this thing of Rav. And so now we're asking a question over here, and every time it says that you found it, you look after the Reiv, he always says he means you found it in the hand of a goy. So it wasn't that birds couldn't have taken it. And the goy, we look at who the Reiv Yatkas are, slaughterhouses. So once again, Tashma, you come in here, about 13 lines on the page. Come in here, Matzah Babasar, you found in the city we eat and going together. If you found raw meat, well, you found, look at the most of the slaughterhouses. But if you found cooked meat, it's a question of kosher, it's safe for cooking, and not only Bishal Akbar as well, then you don't look at the consumers of meat, who they are. It doesn't help us that the slaughterhouses are all eaten. It's a question of who cooked it. Now, so but that's clearly nimtza. Most are eaten. It's good enough. It's called a nimtza. So what are you going to answer me? He's talking about you found it in the hand of a guy. Well, if you found it in the hand of a guy, then what do you mean? If it was cooked, you look after Reiv Oichle Basa. If it's cooked, look on whose hand it is. If it's the guy's hand, it's the guy. And if it's the Yid's hand, it's the Yid. Who cares who the majority of the Oichle Basa are? We see right in front of us who's holding on to it. So that's what I was going to ask now. Cook, you look at the Reiv Oichle Basa, if a guy is holding on to it, that's a guy. And he is all knuckle, and he is holding on, it's kosher. So what's the name? How come my skin? It's talking about you stood there and you saw a person drop it. You saw a person drop it. It's talking about here, I guess, when we say that you found it in the hand of the guy, when we say Nimtza found the hand of the guy, in this case, say Yitaka found it on the floor. You found it on the floor. And you saw it fall out of a hand. You don't know whose hand it is. Fall out of a hand, you fall on the floor. So one thing you know for sure, no bird took it, because you saw it the whole time, no bird came. But you don't know who dropped it and where it came from. So therefore, then we say, look at the Reiv. If it's a raw, look at the Reiv slaughterhouses. If it's cooked, Reiv consumers of meat. Nimtza big vuli. You found meat, let's say in the Azara, and you don't know what carbon it's from. So we say like this: if it's whole avodim, it's a carbon oila, because that's what they did to oila. Didn't break it down too narrow, just in pieces, in large chunks, avodim limbs. If you found it in small pieces, then obviously it's a carbon that people can eat. Shlamim, what is carbon that people can eat? Now, what about you found a big vula, not in the base of meat, but you found out in Yerushalayim, and you found meat there outside. So what do we do there? Avodim or Natacha? What do we say there? So it's like this: if you found large avodim, obviously nobody's going to eat it. Why not? Why is nobody eat it? Because it's treif. So then you assume it's an avela, and they should throw it out. Cut it in big pieces. You can't throw out a big animal and then throw it out. But nimtzik vul avodim is probably an avelis. But chatichis, if it was cut into small pieces, then mutaris, because obviously it was cut to be eaten, and therefore, if reiva eaten, then we say it's eaten, because that's what it's made for. You found it on the street. What about a bird? If you can tell me what, so much that you saw, say avodim nevelis. So what do you tell me if you found large limbs? Is you say in the street? It's probably in the velas. Why should it be the velas? You saw that it fell down. It wasn't thrown. You saw that it fell down. So if you saw that it fell down, maybe it was on the way somewhere. Maybe it was going to be, what's going on here? Says the Gemara, you assume that over here, mutter, if you found meat in the street, means you're allowed to eat it. And therefore you're asking a kasha rab, bosher and salmon ayin. And can't be talking about you actually saw and he saw it fall out. The fall out, there might have come in a thing, the guy's taking it home, but maybe cut it home. But you really wrong shot. Remember who we're talking according to Rav. You know how Rav understood this Mishnah. Meet with Rav, eat Rav, but Rav is mutadus and He didn't say when something mutadus doesn't mean that that what you call that you're allowed to eat it. Of course you're not allowed to eat it. Basha shouldn't have sound lying, but he meant that it's mutter because of nevela. Malchus you won't get. It's a suffix. Maybe a bird changed it. Maybe a bird didn't change it. So we don't know, right? It's a suffix, and you're not allowed to eat it. But if it's large pieces, we'll say that it's that it's not an avela. If it's cut in small pieces, we'll say that it's probably an avela. And Levi is the one who said mutar is bachila, but not the Rav. So according to Rav, no question how to eat it. You don't eat it. But now the one who says, but Rav about Bashan Sam 9 is afraid we understood from an interpreter story. And just like the Gemara before, we said, what's the mind of coming if you interpret it from a story? Sometimes you say a Maisa is greater than just a halacha. Yeah, but every time there's a Maisa, you can always interpret it differently, like we had yesterday. So, for example, here, what happened was Rav, you have a Yosef Amavor. Rav was standing there at the Shtatach. He was standing there by the river where you cross, a place called the Shtatach. He saw this person, he saw this person that was what? That he was washing the head of an animal. Then he saw that the head fell out of his hand into the water. Otherwise, he says he went to bring a basket to catch it, and showed that he put it in the basket in the water, and he pulled out two heads. So Rav says, you think this is how it's normally done? One head falls in, and you win another head coming out of the water. It doesn't happen that way. So therefore, is Asrinya Nella. So Rav said that both heads are usher. Both heads are usher. So we go back. This Amnile Rav Kana Ravasi Rav. This Chuda Shchicha, the Hatela Shchicha. So what do you right away? Do you assume that the heads in the water there are treif, and you make them both usher? Maybe both heads are mutter. Why do you so machmer? We know definitely one is the chayda mutter, and maybe the other one also. Isser is more common. Why? Because we don't just look over here in the immediate area, we look at the whole world. So we see that we are concerned that maybe the head came from elsewhere far away, which is treif. Same thing here. You found the head in the street, and you don't know what head it is. If this is the original head you put there, you put a piece of meat in the street. Maybe a bird brought it from somewhere else. And the world generally are goyim. Are more goyim than Yidden. So therefore, Bosh and Zamlain is also. Says the Gemara, so then it seems pretty clear. So what if you learn from a story? But isn't it quite clear that he's very worried that since we didn't see the head when it fell under the water, ran away, we suspect that maybe it came from the wider world. Same thing over here, a piece of meat on the ground. You didn't watch it the whole time. We suspect that's not the original meat. Like here, he suspected maybe it's not the original head. Maybe the head is what you have in front of you is both heads are from somewhere else. Same thing with the flesh. So it's quite obvious. That's exactly what he's saying here. So the Gemara, Gemara says no. There's another way of interpreting that. Why? Because maybe we can say if most butchers in the city were eating and you found a piece of meat in the street, you can say it's eaten and we're not worried about the birds. But over here, the immediate area, they found it near the port. And the port was a Geisha place. The ships that come in and out and it was very busy is a Yiddish place. And that's why, even though you yourself were Yid, but the Rave here, in other words, in the case of the meat, the Rave Tabachim were Yisrael, we look at the immediate area, most of the Yidden, so we'll say it's Yid. And we're not going to be concerned that maybe a bird brought from far away. Over here, this immediate area, also the majority of people are going because you're there by the docks. And most people there are goyim. Teda proves you. The Karmelu, he told them these Sudash Chichetvei. What did he answer to Rabasi and Kahana? That no, that East is more common. Why is it more common? He's standing here. He's the only one here, and he only has a kosher head because you're in the surrounding area where you are. Most people are goyim. So the rest is a very simple question. Since Rav holds a bossa shenis al mayim for 1 minute, we're worried that the bird changed hands. So how does Rav ever eat meat? How did Rav ever eat meat? But people watch it the whole time from the moment it was geschachten to the moment he ate it. You put it in the kitchen, you put it somewhere, and people walk out. Well, it says yes. The only time he ate meat was that he saw it from when there was the butcher, and it was constantly being monitored by someone until he actually ate from it. That's answer number one. Answer number two, another answer is Betzayra v'chasuma. We're talking about we had Gemara Zara. If it's sealed or double sealed, whatever it is, if it's sealed, then there's no problem. The word chavis, the abbreviation, there's no problem. Or inami b'simona. We had the idea of simon, of cutting in a certain way. We had an element is the he used to cut all the meat in the triangle. He right away he was able to recognize that this is his meat. Nobody else cuts the meat in his particular way. So therefore a bird didn't take and bring other meat because then it wouldn't have been this. So it's a simon. And simonim is the raisa, or even the rabban at least it's strong enough. Yeah, the Rabbi because we'll be Rab Chanan Chasnei. So now I'm going to tell the story about the Rab how Chamri was. Rab once went to the son-in-law's house to Rab Chanan, the son-in-law Chazi, and he saw Mavra the Kosher Lape standing there in the port. Suddenly a boat, a ferry appeared. He didn't summon it. He didn't have a chance to summon it. He put Kosher Lape Omar Mavra Mabara Kosi Lape Yematavalo. This is a good simon, a good sign that we're gonna have a good festive day today. I didn't summon for it, and he came. That means it's the Hashgacha Pratis that I meant to go, and it'll all be nice and fine. Ozli went, Kama Bobby stood by the door of his son-in-law, and Oile Bibiza the Dosh, he looked through the cracks in the door. And Chazi saw this animal, the talia, was hanging suspended from the roof. Thought of a Bobby, then knocked on the door. Nobody saw there was a big party going ahead. Flesh already all being prepared. Thought of a Bobby, knocked on the door, and Rav Choshvid came. Nothing, also kula al malape. Everybody, the waiters, the staff, the chefs, everybody walked out to greet Rav. Also Tavche. Nami also Tavchi also came along the butchers and all those who didn't meat. So how did Rav eat there? So I answered Nami and I said nothing. And Rav watched it the whole time. So while they're all greeting him, he wasn't looking at any of them. He was looking at the flesh there, making sure that it wasn't Basa Shunas Almanayin. He then said to everybody, you left nobody, the boozem mashgiach. You were going to feed treif, Easter, to my daughter's children? Because nobody was watching the flesh. After all that, and he said it's a good simon, it'll be a happy day, he ruined the whole party. He refused to participate in the party. My time is, when I asked, why didn't he eat? He watched the whole time. She felt bad because he made a sign, which you're not making any nachash. He made a sign. He said the boat came on its own is a good sign. And so what's wrong? But we know what's the different kind of signs. Some are good, some are not good. We all believe in simon toiv. We only marry in the first half of the month because the moon grows. We don't want to marry the second half of the month because the moon wanes. So we all have simonim. Tuesday is Zayim Shulchan Toiv. It's not a nachar if you don't follow their method, which is that each one of them made a nachash. Elazar said as if she says to me, you drink and your animals should drink, then that's the girl for Yitzchak. And Yenison said that if they say to us, come, then we know that we're going to win, and so on. So in the fight there. So what's going on here? Ella Sudashus have the reason why they need is a Sudashus. And we already had also before the Pinchas Ben Yoy, remember from reading Chulin, they never ate from a Sudashus. Same thing with Rav. Said the Gemara, but Rav was a Sudashus. Rav would not eat from a Sudashus. Says the Gemara, the rule is okay, we'll go on further, I'll tell you. The Gemara continues, for some money, Rav Bodig B'Maver. Rav used to check to see the boat came on its own, it's a good sign, whether you should go somewhere. Shmuel Bodig B'Safar. Shmuel would look at a sefer. And Rabbi Yechon Bodig B'Nuk. Rabbi Yechon used to be Bodig in a child. He would ask a child, a pasuk. And Shmuel opened up pasuk Chumash, and Rabbi Yechon would ask a child. Every time when Rav was alive, Rabbi Yechon would address me from Middle. Rabbi Yechon said that Rav was much greater than me. He was many more rows in front of me. We'll have that later in the Gemara as well. And Rabbi Yechon used to address Rav as my Rebbe, Rabbeinu Shabbat. Amazing. Kinoch nafshi, when Rav passed away, he had a kosel Shmuel. Rabbi Yechon would write to Shmuel. But the Lekadim Chavarei Shabbat, he would write a letter to my friend and my colleague in Bavel. Shmuel was insulted. Do I know anything more than Rabbi Yechon so I could be entitled to be called his Rav? Suddenly, he made a cheshbon, he calculated 60 years of the calendar going forward. Omar, so as if the Yechon should say, wow, what a great miracle called my Rav. Omar, the Yechon made a comment. He knows math better than me. So Shadaleh, he sent him Tlesa Gamli Savke Trevos. He sent him 13 wagonfuls of questions on Treif, but the questions alone, you can see that it was an amazing Talmud Chacham. Amar, he said, Rabbi Yechon said, Eastly Rabba Bavel. I have somebody here who's a big Talmud Chacham of Bavel. It's amazing. So Rabba and Shmuel both were greater than Rabbi Yechon. And yet the halach is always like Rabbi Yechon and Shlokin as Yisrael versus Rabba and Shmuel. Even when they both join forces, halach is always Rabbi Yechon and Shlokin versus Rabba and Shmuel. Anyway, Ezel Lechazi, let me go see them. I'll go visit Shmuel. I'll go to Babel. He told the kid, tell me what the latest pasuk you learned. It says in Tanakh, Ushmuel, Shmuel Navi Mace. He passed away. The Gemara says, Shmuel didn't pass away. Oh, but the Abisha didn't want Rabbi Yechon to go to leave at Yisrael, the time that he would spend, and he could be teaching Torah. He should be Matziach to go to Bavel. Tanya talking about relying on these things. If Shimon says, and these things, if a person just bought himself built himself a house, or he had a baby, or he got married, even though we don't believe in nachash, yes, Simon, it's a good sign that things will go well for you in the future. Only if the first three things you did after those events were well, if you're matzliach, then you know that you will continue you'll be matzliach. Like in Schleid, you do Schleid and works, and you have the Midas touch. Continue. So if he's after the third time, after three times, then you can say, that's how it's going to be. Now, so big machlek. So what's going on here? Why isn't it nachash? When is it nachash? So the Mashagi is a very interesting rule. He says, if you only go one way, it's a good simon to get married this time. That's not called nachash. Nachash is if you do if this is going to be, then it's good. But if it's the other way, then things are going to turn bad. When you do both sides, like by tonight, coffee, you do both sides. That's when it's called a nachash. Like Yonis said, if they say this, we'll win. If they don't say this, then we're going to lose. That's cool, and you're going to base yourself on that. That's a nachash. And Eliezer, you're going to have to say that he said it, even though Taylor doesn't spell it out. He didn't say, if she doesn't say it, I won't go for it. That's why it's not a nachash. Others say that a nachash is if it makes sense, like in Eliezer, the condition he made sense. If she's a mensch, or for this and this, makes sense. Even and that's why they were able to do that. Like the Torah says, or Yanis and also, if they show fear, it makes sense that they can do that. Even though just me, Yanis is only me, my person, my servant. They can engender more fear in them. Where it makes sense, it's not nachash at all. And also, where the simon, and if you don't have a simon, you wouldn't do it. You still do it. Haraya, today you get married even the second half of the month. So that's not called nachash. The Rambam learned that by his understanding is only when isn't it nachash if you talk about events of the past. What I did before is it must be good, but if you're going to behave in the future, that's called nachash. And the Raibit argues, the Raibit says it has nothing to do. There's no Eastern heter over here. It's just telling you, if you can rely that it's going to happen, not going to happen. Not that whether it's us or it's mutter. It's not what we're talking about here at all. So okay, let's go back to Gemara. So we'll get back to it. Says the Gemara. Rabun asked a question. Let's say the meat was hanging on a string. What's it in then? That's a silly question. How they the simon? Of course, it's a simon. But the bird knows how to put other treif and meat and put it on the. Of course not. It wasn't a question. He said it as a psak. It's a good simon. Rav Nachman adoy equal beit of kahana. Rav Nachman adoy once met a kahana lefum nada b'malin Erevim kippur also orvi and came along while they were there. Erevim kippur came along these ravens. And shodu kabdim kolusa, they dropped over their liver and kidneys. Go ahead and eat it. Here, heter is more shkiach, which means the birds don't fly that far away, and with the area that they cover is mainly eaten. And if you keep it, everybody eats flesh. We have the 4 times a year that you have to say oishas b'noi because everybody eats flesh. He lost over here some part of the intestine, something amongst the barrels. He said, I found it. Can I rely? It's the same one, or it's something else. He said to him, we have a similar. No, you recognize it? Yes, if you recognize it's good enough. He lost the back of a bista. He lost the back of a piece of meat. Also the kamid, and then he found it. He ended up nachem leislas. Can I eat it? You have a simon amali. No. From these stories, they bring it out that the halach is like Rav Basha Zamline. Also, big machek. Rashi holds the halach is Basha Zamline is mutter. We don't have this chumra worried about birds. Others bring it. Others try and learn from this Gemara. You say that it's awesome. But Tviyas Ayin, if you recognize it's good enough. He lost the whole pile of tchelis. Now, tchelis is that color can also be color ilon. It could be that the synthetic, that other color that comes from the sap of a tree. And then he found it. You have a simon. You recognize that this is yours. Big amalei yes. In case this girl take it, it's yours. Tviyas Ayin is good enough. First I thought Simona Odim Tizaina Simon is better than just recognizing it. If you give a Simonim and Aved, they'll give back to you. We don't give back to Tizayin, only Tamachachim. Now the question is, we thought the reason why Tamachachim you give it back is the Talmud Chacham has maybe a better look, has a better memory, and everything else. But Stam Tviyas Ayin doesn't work. That's why we don't get back to Amaretz. Then I realized that's not the reason why. Tviyas Ayin everybody has, but we don't trust Amaratzim that they're telling the truth. The Midrash Maggid said Tviyas Ayin is because you know that you're avoiding and the tzutzas are in this particular Gashmis, and therefore the Talmud Chacham knows that. I heard of this old Gemaras. I mean, Tviyas Ayin are different. Tviyas Ayin is better, and I'll prove it to you. How can a blind woman's wife? The only thing he recognizes is her voice. You can't see, it's on the voice. El Tvis ain't the color. The Tvis Ein, you recognize the voice. That's good enough. Tvis Ein good enough. I'll prove it to you. Also betray if two people come along and say, we know this person, let's say, commit a crime. I have a simon here, this person, but you don't recognize the person. That's not aegis. We're not going to kill the murderer based on the fact that you don't know who the person is, you never see the person's face, but you have a few simonim. Maybe somebody else has the same simonim. In other words, DNA might be a problem. The ilu amri islan tvias ein begavei. But if they say we recognize the person, Katlin, we'll kill him. That's good enough. Tell the shliach, go call that person, the haisimon, here the signs. He wears a red jacket and this and that. Something the shliach doesn't feel secure that this is actually the person. The but the shliach actually knows who the person is. So this easy to recognize him and says, yeah, you're the guy that he wants. See you tomorrow back to normal time after davening in Mitzvah. Yeah, have a good day.